So, welcome everyone to the Pi Vision 2017 release. Hopefully, we've gotten past the name change that happened, but if you're looking for the core site presentation, this is it. It's just renamed Pi Vision. So before we get there, I wanted to really address something that has come to us from me presenting the visualization vision. So really, what our job here is to take your operational data that comes into the Pi system and to deliver that wherever you need that to be. So whether or not that's a control center, desktop, or a mobile device. What we're going to be concentrating on is delivering that data, that real-time data, in the past, present, and future. And we'll wait for them to correct that. But really, the feedback we got was some of the capabilities that you're talking about may compete with other third-party applications like Tableau, Power BI, things of that nature. And we also got feedback that some of the capabilities compete with partners. That's not our intention. Our intention is to take that operational data and deliver it to our customers and partners however they want it. Where we're really going to be focusing on is those requirements on the right-hand side of this slide. One is what our customers have told us through our research is they want a seamless experience. So taking the rich context that's in the Pi system and delivering that to the users in context, in a unified experience. The second one is ubiquitous. So we want to take what we build and make sure it hits all those things, the control center, the desktop, and the mobile. And really where we're going to be focusing on is that bottom one, the operational user. Intuitive, self-service, off-the-shelf experience so that you can be empowered as an operational user. So you don't have to go to IT and set up a very complex environment to really get what you need from the operational data. So we really wanted to address that to basically say, we're inviting partners into this ecosphere. We want them to build in our platform. And we really aren't going to compete with business intelligence applications. What we want to do is bring some of those things into our environment when you're dealing with operational data so that you don't have to use a third-party tool if you don't want to. So again, Pi Vision. Why did we rename Pi Vision? And I think Ray really hit this. We have one visualization vision, and it's really to drive that seamless experience when you're using the Pi system. So we thought by changing the name, it would really resonate with our new vision. And really, that bottom one, we want to be your window into operational intelligence. Now, I went through this slide last year. This is really the capabilities that we're focusing on. What I'd like to say this year is those capabilities, those features that we're building into the product are going to allow you to build those rich information displays, those dashboards. So we're not going to provide that out of the box, like pre-canned dashboards and those things. What we're going to continue to do, like we've done in the past, is provide you the tools, those capabilities, those features to allow you to do all these things that you do on a constant basis in your day-to-day operations. The thing that you've probably heard a lot about this year is the extensibility pattern. That is very critical to us, and I hope you understand why. You heard Don Morrison in the keynote really talk about how with the extensibility pattern, we put the power back into his hand to actually do what he needed to drive the business. And that's really what's important about this extensibility pattern is we're going to continue to be building things every 6 months, but now we push the power back into you to extend the platform. What's new this year is we took about the past last year after understanding our vision and said, as a development team, what can we do differently to change the trajectory to get to a point where we reach that vision quicker? And it's really these 6 key focal points, and I'm gonna concentrate on 2. One is that modern architecture. We really believe that the architecture is important for us to speed time to market. By us reducing the complexity of our own application, we can add more features, more capabilities, more quickly to get to that vision. And we're taking steps to do that. and you're going to hear some of those steps in London at the EMEA conference. We're not ready to share some of those, but we really invite you to go to London, listen to what comes out of London, because we're going to be talking about that. The other one is value-add features. When I call Tom and Jason up here to do the demo after I get done, you're going to see what I mean by value-added features. We're putting things into the product that we've never done before. We're leveraging AF, we're leveraging notifications, and we want to hear your ideas moving forward on what you need once you see us solving those new features. The last one is process graphics. We've been talking about, we are now going to be moving off of ProcessBook over into Pi Vision. That's a change for us. We didn't really have that vision probably 2 years ago. So this is going to take us a little bit to learn what is necessary. One thing that we're concentrating on is being proactive in moving your ProcessBook displays into Pi Vision. We're building some utilities that'll give us some insight into your ProcessBook displays. And really, we're building a new display conversion technology that will be the underpinnings of doing that. It's a little early in the process. We're not really sharing that now. We're going to be sharing that again in London. The other one I want to say is superior data access. We are really refocusing the effort of the Pi Web API team to be that RESTful service layer to drive visualization. If you have used the Pi Web API and if you've hit some problems, I just want to actually communicate that that will be the underpinning of our RESTful service layer. So when you hit those problems, please communicate it to us. We have a very large team that's actually concentrating on that, and the performance optimizations and the things that we're doing are going quite well as we go. So the roadmap. Really, we're going to be releasing a really fabulous release at this users conference. I don't know if it got out. The end of April, second quarter is when the Pi System 2017 release comes out. What you're going to see from Jason and Tom are all the features that are in that release. In EMEA, we're going to do some editor enhancements, and we're going to be talking about the new architecture. And then we're going to have another big release in San Francisco 2018. And with that, I'd like to call up Tom LeBay to give you a good and powerful demo.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here. So as Chris said, my name's Tom LeBay. I'm product manager for our visualization products. So I hope Chris gave you a nice view of kind of the overarching things that are driving us, the vision driving us forward on how we're looking to provide a full, rich, unified experience. What we'll focus on for the rest of the time here is the release that's upcoming the end of this April, so Pi Vision 2017. So we got a few things that we're going to focus on, some of the key features. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but some of the things that we really think are going to drive some of the value and we want to dig into. So let me go into each one of these things in a little bit of detail. So the first one, collections. This is what we're calling it. It's a little hard to understand just by that name, so let me explain. So a collection is a group of one or more visual objects, probably dynamic objects. So like I have here on the screen, I've got a picture of a truck, I've got a value symbol, a gauge, a trend. So this works really well where I've got repeating kinds of assets. So say I'm working in a minefield and I have multiple trucks. So I create this little snippet of information that tells me what I need to know about any given truck. But really, I want to see all the trucks, and I don't want to have to recreate that multiple times. So I make this into a collection. What that means is it now replicates. Now, how does it decide to replicate? I can assign a search criteria to this that can include filters and routing in my AF structure. So in this case, I've got 6 different trucks in my field, and they automatically replicate. If I go to a different field that has 10 or 20, this can replicate itself, and it reacts dynamically to my AF structure. So if I add a truck or I remove a truck, my display updates automatically. So we're really excited about this. The customers we've talked to have really responded. I think there's a lot of creative ways that you might use this. We've had some in mind, but really excited to see how this might react in the field. and other creativity. So a couple other new things we've got, an asset table, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in more detail in a second. The second thing is this events table. So there's a couple of use cases we see for the events table. So for our batch customers, certainly can see this where a event frame is defined by that batch, and maybe I want to see what batches are running in a couple of vessels at any given time. I can create this events table. Again, I configure a search criteria, assign it to the assets that I'm interested in, maybe a time range, and I'm always going to see the event frames or the batch that's running at any given time. Updates as a batch is complete, they'll fall off. New ones start up, they'll show up there. Another use case would be more of an alarm type view. I can configure this to look for event frames based on a severity definition. Maybe I always want to see my highest severity kind of events that are going on for a failure. That's your events table. So that, and that's CTP. CTP, by the way, stands for Community Technical Preview. So this is production code, stuff we're working on, but it's got some security configuration issues that make it a little challenging, and there may be some scalability issues. So we think it's valuable enough to get out there. You may have some challenges at a full production scale, so we're labeling it as CTP for this release. We expect to improve those things or correct those things going forward. So now this asset table. This is similar to collections, but now it's going to be presented in a table type format. So take our existing table that we had in CoreSite, turn it on its side. I now see the assets are in the column on the far left. Each asset has its own row, and then I have my attributes going across. So really easy to compare lots of similar assets in a table. Like my collections, I can also assign a search criteria to this as well. So in this case, I'm creating a filter. So I'm looking at my mine trucks, but in this case, I'm looking at attribute values, so real-time values, the status of the truck, that it's running, that it has a load of greater than 100 pounds. I think that's what the units are for this. So now I apply this to my table. The assets on my table automatically update. So I'm only going to see the trucks that are operating and carrying a load. So a really interesting, and again, this is going to update in real time. Things will fall off or come on, so I can really see in a dynamic way what's going on in my process. So excited about the capabilities for this asset comparison table. So something else we've added is a new user type in PyVision 2017. So we're calling these Publisher and Explorer. Publisher is what you've always had. So PyCoreSite user is what it would have been defined as before. So that user has the ability to create displays and share and edit and do all that. The Explorer is kind of like a read-only user. It's a little bit better than that, so that's why we came up with a different name than read-only. Explorer can manipulate displays, they can add new things to them, they can even create new ad hoc displays. They just can't save any of that work. So we've heard from a number of you, CoreSite made it so easy to create new displays that sometimes that was a problem. You just had people randomly created stuff that didn't have long-term value, that got confused with other things. You had these users that really weren't content creators for the group at large. So we think this Explorer type user helps meet that use case. Someone who needs to consume displays that others are creating. They need to do ad hoc stuff, but then it kind of gets thrown away. It doesn't need to be persisted. So that's the Explorer. We also are anticipating that this will have a different economic price point. So you'll learn more about that when we release, but that's another use case to hopefully allow you to make CoreSite or PyVision 2017 available to more people because we've reduced the price point. So we now have added an XY plot. In our user voice or our customer feedback site, this has by far been one of the most requested new symbols. So we're happy that that's going to now be part of the product. So added a lot of capabilities, being able to correlate between attributes, compare multiple assets, so with multiple reference or x-axes, time range, we've got a regression line, all good stuff. Similar to the events table, we're labeling this as CTP. Similar kind of issues. There's some complex security configuration you might have to set up. It depends on your network architecture, and you may have some scalability issues. We're going to address those going forward, but by all means, we think it's worth trying. We know XY plot, and there's a lot of use cases for that, so that will be in this next release. A nice feature for our batch or event customers, so you can now pin an event, make it a reference. This is the golden batch kind of operation. So you select that event, pin it, and it gets saved with your display. Can always go back and look at that. A graphic library, again, one of our highly requested things. This is essentially the same library we've had in ProcessBook for a long time. It is a newer version of it. The one in ProcessBook really hadn't been refreshed in quite a number of years, so a little bit better gradations. There's a few extra symbols, over 300 total, but hopefully this is a nice pass forward for people coming from ProcessBook to be able to use that same kind of graphic library. So we're excited about that. And then last thing here, so drill-in navigation. We know that reusing displays, contextual navigation is an important part of efficiently creating displays. So contextual navigation allows you to navigate from one display to another. We've now expanded the linking capability to any dynamic symbol. It used to be just on our text symbol. Now you can link from anything, a gauge, a trend, a graphic, anything you put on the display. You can put a link behind it, navigate out to the web if you want, but also to another display. And when you navigate to that display, you can pass the context, the time range, the asset of interest, or you can set a new AF route to allow you to do things like here I've got a high-level page that shows me all of my trucks. I click on any one of those trucks and it navigates to a common display, but in the right context. So if I click on truck 1, I get the information for 1. Click on truck 2, the information for truck 2. Drill in further if I want to see the brakes or the frame information. So all that with the contextual navigation is now possible. Okay, so with that's kind of the quick explanation of all the features. Now I'm going to invite Jason Gala. Jason is one of our developer team leads, and Jason's going to go through the paces to see a little bit how all these features kind of come together to really drive a display. So thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Tom. So in this scenario, I'm going to be doing OSIsoft Power Gen. I'm going to be, we're a power generation company. We have 3 different divisions. We have our fossil generation, wind generation, and solar generation. So I start off on one of my summary displays. This is an overview for our entire generation fleet. I have a map here that has some of our KPIs with just where some of our plants are located. I also have an events table down here that's showing me all of the events across the corporation. For this demo, I'm going to be focusing mainly on our asset comparisons table here on the right-hand side. Each one of these is a row. The row is an asset with attributes as the columns. For our scenario, I'm going to be the wind farm guy. So I start my day by looking at this summary display and then start diving into each one of our wind farms looking for any potential issues. So I'm going to start off with our Yellow Creek wind farm. So I'm going to click on this bottom row, and this is going to open up a template display of our wind farm. So this wind farm looks the same for any of my other wind farms, so it helps me spatially remember where things are located with just switching context from farm to farm. So I have some weather information here. I have my power versus forecast. So this is one of my important factors to look at. So when I come in, I usually bring this up by double-clicking on it and bring up a full screen display of my trend. And this full screen display gives me our total power, expected power, and our forecast data. So I like to scroll a little bit into the future because we have a little bit of forecast data to see how we're doing expected versus actual, and then zoom in just to get a little bit more data there, get a little bit finer view. So right now everything at Yellow Creek looks pretty good. So I'm gonna head back to my template display. Down the bottom we have a collection symbol. This collection symbol is showing each turbine located at Yellow Creek. So Yellow Creek has 8 turbines on the farm. The collections are made up of a radio gauge showing capacity, as well as a multi-state symbol that's telling me about overheat alarms. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back. I've looked at Yellow Creek for a little, and next I want to go ahead and check out my Big Buffalo farm. So the same way, I'm going to click on Big Buffalo Wind Farm in my asset comparison table. And again, this brings up my template display. So I have the same power versus forecast data, so I can again zoom in, I can check that out, see how we're doing, expected versus actual. So we still look pretty good here. But now I notice down the bottom, well, I have we have more turbines in our Big Buffalo plant. So now our collection has been updated to show all 10 of those. But I can see we have some issues with some of these turbines, just by the red multi-state indicator. So I want to go ahead and dive into that and figure out what is going on with our turbine. So I'm going to double click on this GE03 turbine, and this brings up my summary display for a turbine. The summary display, again, like the farm overview, is the same template type of display where spatially everything's located where I want it, but just the data swaps out for the current asset that I'm looking at. So in this case, I'm looking at that GE03 turbine. So I have some of my KPIs over at the top. This big red overheat indicator to me is already telling me that there's some sort of problem. I have some manufacturer information in a table just so I know what I'm looking at, the serial number. Down the bottom, I have my XY plot. So this is my first indication now that I'm seeing something wrong here, because I'm comparing wind speed versus active power, and it looks like we were actually going down. So as the wind blew harder, we were actually making less power. So that's probably
that could be a problem.
It's not a great business model. So now I'm okay. Now I know there's something going on here. I want to dive more into this turbine. I want to see what's going on here. So since we have an overheat alarm, I want to look at some of my temperature indicators on this turbine. So I also have an asset comparison table that's showing me all of the events that have fired for this asset over the last 7 days. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little analysis here, and I'm going to look for any event that has the word temperature in it. So look for contains temp. So now I filtered out some of them. So the list didn't change that much because most of these are these high temperature events. So it's to let me know that really we've been seeing this pretty often. So I think I'm on the right track. I just want to dive a little bit deeper into this problem. So I'm going to double click on this first event, which dives into the event details for that display. So when this opens up, it brings up the event details for this particular event. And the first thing I see is that we're in an alarm state, which isn't a great thing it's our trigger attribute, but it's not a great thing to be plotting here. So I'm going to turn that off because it's just 1 or 0. And I'm going to start turning on some of our other temperature indicators here to see what some of the temperatures were like when this event fired. And I can hover over some of these and see that some of these temperatures have been going up during the life of this event. So that's letting me know that I really am starting to see some sort of a problem with this event. Oops. So let me go ahead and just close this tab. That opened in a new tab. So now I know a little bit about it. So there were some problems with that event. So I think I'm on the right track, but I want to do a little bit more analysis. So I actually have another display that I've already created to look at this. I've linked it up here at the top, just using a text link to another display. And this display is an overlay trend display. So it's comparing that current event with a bunch of the similar events that have occurred recently. So here I can see how some of our gearbox temperature, our generator temperature, and some other temperatures compare to wind speed with previous events and my current event. And I see that we have a pinned event. So somebody has already noted that there's something happened previously with this type of event. So I want to take a look at some of the details that they looked at before to see maybe they have some information there that can help me solve and diagnose this problem. And I can see somebody left a comment for me saying, hey, this was a simple maintenance fix for the temperature sensor on the turbine. So now I've done some of my analysis. I've seen what some of our other colleagues have done, saying with this event. So I'm pretty certain now that I know what the problem is. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my display, and I want to now just look at the temperature details for this particular turbine. So I have one more link here called Thermal Details, and this brings up really just a detailed view of all the different temperatures I'm seeing around my turbine. And excuse me, I see the gearbox temperature here is at 60 degrees, and some of the other temperatures are a little bit lower. So that's really letting me know that something's going on here. So I can go ahead and say, all right, I'm now confident I know what the problem is. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my events pane, look at the events detail, and just let everyone know, we are sending a crew. If I can't spell, live demo, sorry. Still can't spell. So go ahead and add my comment. Now everybody knows that, yes, we know we're looking at this. And hopefully whenever we get it fixed, we can add some information in there. So at the end, hopefully everything gets fixed. We see that XY plot showing an actual positive correlation. So as wind speed goes up, we make more power. And what you do when you fix all these problems is it's time to celebrate.
Great job. Thanks, Jason. So I hope you saw a lot of the power there. So Jason was using collections. He's using XY plot, that contextual navigation, our events pane. He did some comments on events, event details, lots of the power of PiVision 2017. So those are some really nice displays. And I know Jason probably spent weeks getting those to look that well because he's not very graphically talented. So let's give him a chance to show you a little bit how he would make that. So from scratch, because it's nice seeing it all work together, but how hard was it to create that? Jason, could you show us real quick?
So if my boss asked, it took me weeks. That's it.
Threw flour on his face.
So first, I'm going to quickly go over how I created that collection. So the collection was the series of radial gauges and multi-state symbols that was repeated for the AF hierarchy. What I was showing was one radial gauge for each wind turbine in a particular farm. So to do that, I start on my I navigate into my hierarchy. Each one of these GE01 through GE10 represents a turbine. I can select radial gauge and go find my capacity. So yes, easy. Everybody knows how to do that. But the fun part is when you right-click and say Convert to Collection, and now I have 10 of them on my display and weeks worth of work done. But there's a little bit more, so I'm going to get paid for a couple more weeks. So I'm going to look for some bad actors among here. So I'm going to look for some of my underperforming gauges, because who cares when things are operating correctly? We don't want to go looking for problems. We want to see what's misbehaving. So I can actually change the criteria that I'm looking at. So I can right-click and choose Edit Criteria, and I can go to my asset type, and I can look for the capacity. And I'm going to look for anything under, I have to look at what these all say, but we'll look under 20. And I'll hit refresh. Oops, equal to 20. Let's try under 20, because there's nothing equal to 20. There we go. So now I've changed my collection to just show me the ones that are underperforming. As some of them fall out of this range and go above 20%, they'll fall off this list. If other ones start underperforming, they'll just pop up on this list. So this list, or this collection, will live update with your AF hierarchy as well as the data. So that's how I created the basics of the collection for the wind farm overview page.
2 weeks in.
2 weeks in. So one of the other things that took many, many weeks to do was the asset comparison table. That was the the assets for rows and attributes for columns. So it's a really quick and easy way to see how each one of your assets is doing relative to similar assets. So to create the asset comparison table, I just select the asset comparison table, look down for my gearbox. I just grab the whole category because it'll grab me all of the attributes underneath that. And this creates the asset comparison table. So, right now I have one row for my asset, a bunch of different attributes for that asset. So I want to compare this to the rest of my turbines. So I'll go ahead and grab GEO2 and I'll shift click to grab the rest of them. I'll drag them on and we will have a table that's now comparing every one of my turbines against each other. So I can see just relative to each other how each one of these are doing with a couple of quick clicks and a few weeks of work. So if I want some overtime, I'll also go ahead and just sort this. So now I can see which one is the hottest in this case. So I'm sorting from high to low. So now I can actually see my list based on what the values are compared to all the other values of the turbines. So there's, when I also built this, and I was able to navigate to a new display based on this data. So it's great to create this table and see, but sometimes you really want to be able to dive into more details. So to do that, I just right click, add navigation link, and this brings up a way for us to add a link to any display or any hyperlink. And I'm going to go ahead and search for all of my displays. And I can't even type my name. And I'm going to look at that turbine detail, and I'm going to just open it up in a new tab. So now, in a couple of clicks, I've linked every row of this table to a display that will pass the context of the row I click on to that new display. So when I go ahead and click on GE09, it opened a new tab because that was one of the selections I chose, and it brings up that template display for GE09 with all the values and all the context that go along with GE09. So you can see the name is WTG09. So now I'm at a month or a month and a half of work. I'm not sure, but.
The time per click is mind-boggling.
So we also showed some the events table. The idea of being able to have a table that shows all of your events for a particular asset. And off that table, you're able to get into the event details for the event. So again, this was a huge amount of work because I had to go all the way over to the events pane. So it's one extra click now. And this shows me all the current events for all the assets on this display. So I actually want to filter that down a little bit. So I'm going to edit the search criteria that's related with the event pane right now. And I'm only going to look for, the GE01 events. So I'm just kind of filtering down that list a little bit. But I have this big old button that says Create Events Table. So I wonder if that's going to help me get this done a little quicker. And there we go. So what this does, so it took what I searched for there and actually populated this table and gave me put all the events related to GE01 on a single table. This is all the events over the time range of this display. I'm able to add some additional columns here so I can see this second event here was acknowledged. So we have the ability to acknowledge events directly from this table, as well as I can add the column to see who acknowledged that event. And surprise, it was me when I was practicing one of my other demos. So we can also have the ability to add severity, the duration of the event, and then we can also go ahead and change down the bottom the search criteria that was actually used to create this event. So if I want to change it to be different than the display time range, if I want it to be for the past day or the past week, I can go ahead and quickly change that right in the configuration pane and have it saved with the display. So every time I save that, reopen this display, it'll show me the events that I want to see in that table. So I think the last thing to show here is the the idea of the graphic symbol, so if you're familiar with Process Book, we had the symbol toolbox library there with tons and tons of symbols to help standardize your graphics across your displays. I didn't point it out during the demo, but we had quite a few of them shown in there. So we've added a new pane here to the left-hand side for the graphic library. So this shows each of the different categories available. So all the graphics are categorized by different industries and type. So for my demo, I spent mostly all of my time doing wind farm stuff. So I spent a lot of time looking at this renewable category. So I do have, this was the wind turbine that I used to show in the thermal details of the display. So there's tons of different graphics in here for all different industries. There's different tanks, all different power graphics, stuff like that. So it really gives you a quick and easy way to be able to standardize your displays or standardize the graphics across your displays. And then there's one thing you have to do. So I'm almost finally done, and I don't really like getting up on stage. So I have to celebrate the end of every one of my demos with a nice big cold one and say thank you.
So I think, Jason, you actually spent probably 10 minutes building the displays and then the next week and a half making them look good, because that's
my design skills in action here.
Okay, great. Can you go back to the slides? So I hope that helped everyone get an idea of the features that we've created in this next release and then the value and how to create some of those. So the collections, really excited about that. This kind of goes back to some of those capabilities that Chris talked about in the beginning, where we're trying to deliver some core functionality, the ability to drive displays dynamically. I know there's some of you in the audience that probably love going back and manually updating displays every time a piece of equipment changes, but there's some of you that will probably enjoy having those displays update automatically. So the events table, graphic library, drill and navigation, pinned events, XY plot. We think these are some of the big features coming in the 2017 release of Pi Vision. There's lots of other nice, good things in there, so we're excited for you to be able to get your hands on it, and we'll have that out just as soon as possible. So a little bit about what's coming next. So the second half of this year, we're planning on having another release, so Pi Vision 2017 R2. So the XY plot and the events table, as I mentioned, we're going to get those cleaned up the rest of the way and be able to have them be fully released, fully performant. We're doing a number of server-side enhancements for the web API. As Chris mentioned, that's going to be a core feature of our visualization products going forward. So see a lot of performance and scalability going on there. A lot of other nice things that people have been asking for in the editor, so things like snap to grid, being able to print displays more efficiently, more control over fonts and formatting, things like that. So hopefully a lot more nice stuff coming in the second half of this year as well. So I just want to give a quick pitch. If you haven't seen this already in other presentations, we love hearing back from you. CoreSite, a little over a year ago, was the first product to adopt our user voice feedback mechanism. So there's a link directly in the product, or you can go to the OSI website, and now you can give feedback on any of the OSI products. This isn't a guarantee that we'll get your thing into it, but believe me, we look at it. We look at it constantly, and it makes a difference. The more we can hear from you helps us understand what the most valuable things are we can put in the product. I think we're going to knock off about 20 or 25 user requests on the top of that list with this release, and we hope we'll do the same thing in each release going forward. So with that, I'll invite Chris Nelson back up. And Jason, I think we've got a couple of minutes. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to do that. If there's a mic in the back, yeah, here it comes. So great.
You're going to be busy running around.
Hi, I just have a quick question on the asset table. When you showed the display, you had to actually select your assets and then throw them on. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What about for something more dynamic, where, like for us, wells are changing every day and we're adding new wells. Are you going to make that more dynamic so that I can pick from a a level up instead of having to select those assets one by one every time something new comes on?
So that you can add, like the collections, you can do the same thing with that asset comparison table. We didn't show that here right now, but you could have clicked on that and said add search criteria, and you done the same thing, and then it would have updated dynamically. So, yeah,
Thank you.
Excellent question. Thanks.
Hi, currently we have named users. Will we have concurrent user licensing?
So yeah, licensing is kind of a different question. A lot of the structure of CoreSite is based on a personal experience, and we actually plan on doing more of this in the future. For instance, when you acknowledge an event, there's a person that acknowledges that. So having a user using the product and identifying who that user is, we think is an important part of this product, especially going forward. It's kind of like an email account. You don't normally share an email account. There might be some use cases where you can do that and you're willing to share a common login. You can do that, but we like and plan to leverage the individual user experience in the environment. But
the collections, are they able to inherit the AF relativity of the page? So if I have a page for a region, be able to show the 6 pumps that are associated with that region based on the AF relativity of the page?
General answer, yes. There may be some details on how well that works based on your structure, but the example we showed was exactly that, where Jason went from one wind farm to another, and there was a different number of assets in each wind farm, and it replicated. So yes, that's exactly one of the use cases we're going
I'll
after.
just say, collections is new. This is the first time we're doing it. It's one of those new things that we're doing. We probably didn't get it 100% correct, so if you hit some of those things that we didn't get, please get it to us, and we'll get it into the next release.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's one more up here in the front.
Because I said he was going to be the first question, he held off a little bit.
This will probably have to be our last one because I think we're over time. But
The asset comparison table was great. I just had a question about is if you've sorted it by one of the attributes and that attribute changes, will that dynamically float? And then correspondingly, can you create like a multi-state symbol to change the color or any of that?
yeah, so yes, it will float if the values change, if that's what you're sorting on. We got a lot of requests for to be able to multi-state that. We didn't get it in this release, but yeah, we've heard that, so that's definitely on our list of to-dos going forward to make those cells multi-state.
We've got 4 minutes.
Oh, we do? Okay, all right, we got some more time then if there's more questions.
Can we maybe talk about how Active Directory plays a part? Is it, has to be used, or?
Yeah,
I'll take this one. This release, we're mixing some technologies in this release, and the security setup is going to be kind of cumbersome. So I think we need to understand what your environment is. We're doing a lot of work to try to see where we're going to be okay, where we're not going to be okay, and we're going to put out some guidance there. But right now, if you wanted Active Directory, if you set it up for Kerberos authentication, you can be using that stuff.
Yeah. Part of the issue is that the rest of the Pi system uses Windows security. So when CoreSite or Pi Vision, sorry, I'm still learning the new name myself. When it goes and asks for data, it needs to authenticate to the rest of the Pi system. So Windows security is still there.
Are you asking specifically about claim support? Okay. Okay. Why don't you get one of us afterwards, and we can have that talk.
Anyone else?
Any other questions? We knew we weren't going to get away.
You wanted to know what kind of beer that was in this.
I know it wasn't a Budweiser. With the events table and the acknowledge in the entering of a comment, what about reason codes, pull downs, and saving that?
Yeah, that definitely heard that. It was something we actually were going to go after that. This release didn't quite get there, so we had to back it back out. But yeah, we.
So is that for 2017 R2?
Yes, it is. All right. Yeah. Yep. Get them on camera. Yeah, definitely a good use case.
Any others?
All
I
right.
just want to get everybody to raise their hand. How many people think collections is a game changer for us? Okay. That's what we thought, and that's where I really just want to hit. Those are the types of things where solving new problems that we're trying to focus on. So we'd love to crowdsource any of those ideas. So if you have any like that, any big ideas like that, that's really where we want to do is really leverage the infrastructure. So thanks for that feedback.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. Have a great afternoon.